Okay. Welcome everybody to this evening's Cabinet meeting on Monday the 2nd of February. And those that are in the chamber by way of additional members or members of the public. May I have authorised to sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 8th of December 2025. Thank you very much. Thank you. Apologies for absence, Louise.
There are none, Chair.
Thank you. Additional agenda items?
There are none.
Thank you. Urgent decisions?
There are none.
Disclosure of interests and dispensations. I think members are aware that we need to receive disclosures by members of disclosure of pecuniary interest and other registrable interests, non-registrable interests in the matters on the agenda, and the nature of any interest and details of any dispensations obtained. Members are reminded of the need to repeat their declaration immediately prior to the commencement of the item in question. So we have Hazel, Councillor Timpey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Delaware Board Trustee, non-prejudicial, non-pecuniary interest, item 6.
Yeah, Catherine, Councillor Ford? The same, okay. Yeah, Councillor Chair.
Sorry, Leader. I am a member of the Delaware Pavilion.
Yes. And Aaron?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm a member for item 6 of Sussex Wildlife Trust in terms of Rye Harbour.
Okay, thank you. Right, the first item is agenda item 6, page 3 to 62, the draft budget and medium-term financial plan.
Chairman, since I probably will raise it, I ought to declare I am a member of the Friends of Rye Harbour and also the Sussex Wildlife Trust.
Yeah, that's noted, John, thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I am also a member of Sussex Wildlife Trust.
And Councillor Field?
Redeclare.
Right. Councillor Christine Bayliss.
Get there eventually, yeah. Yes, I'm the board member for Rother District Council of Rye Chamber of Commerce. So it's a non-pecuniary interest.
Yeah. You've got all those, have you? All right, Louise? Oh, and watch out, there's a couple more coming in from our right-hand side.
Redeclare.
Redeclare.
Just redeclaring myself.
Right. Is that it? Can we have some lights off? Thank you. Right, okay. Got through the business part of the meeting and we move into the first item then, agenda item 6. This is the draft budget 2026-27, the medium-term financial plan 26 to 29. The report of our Director of Resources, Charlotte Spendley, but I think the report's going to be introduced online from Councillor Jaywon. Is that right, Ash?
That's correct.
Jolly good. Over to you then.
Lovely. Thanks very much. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well. So yes, Chairman has just stated this is the report summarising the work undertaken to date on the proposed revenue budget for 26-27 with some updates to the capital programme and the medium-term financial plan for 26 to 29. So overall, Cabinet has requested to consider any recommendations that arose from the recent overview and scrutiny committee on the 26th of Jan, who considered this matter. Obviously, reports and recommendations arising are reproduced in the pack below, and the minutes of that meeting should be read in conjunction with this. So just some key points to pull out to start with. So this paper is really a culmination of all the hard work since the summer that goes on behind the scenes in budget setting, etc. So some key areas to note. First of all, the balanced budget without the use of reserves to meet the net cost of reserves. So that, to meet the net cost of services. So that's really positive. Better than anticipated local government settlement in 26 to 27, but this is limited uplift for subsequent financial years, so we just need to bear that in mind for the future. Prior year's savings programmes, so as well as this year's budget challenge exercise, this has significantly contributed to the balanced budget position. So again, great work with the officers and the reduction savings programme that we've been working really hard on. The budget makes provisions for the cost of devolution and anticipates the cost of those services remaining with the council during 26 and 27. The productivity plan budget and the funding from flexible capital receipts have also been incorporated into this budget for transparency. So just some risks for us to consider. So the first one is the staff pay award. So this has been budgeted at 3%, and paragraph 22 outlines this in more detail should you need it. The national pay terms seek a 10% or a 3,000 minimum uplift. So this will have an impact on the RDC budget, which will create an additional cost pressure of 920,000. The next risk to consider is the significant additional financial costs as a result of less cash available for investment and additional borrowing. So this has been offset in year by interest payable by the housing company, and you'll see that in the papers. Other areas to consider is the budget was consulted on during December, and the feedback is also appended within the pack. Overview and scrutiny considered the draft position last week, and the notes of their meeting are also contained in Appendix H to the report. Recommendations arising were to retain Camber winter parking charges at the same level, so the 2025-2026 level, and also to reinstate the Rye Harbour Nature Reserve grant, which is at a cost of £1,050. Another point to add is our element of council tax anticipated to rise by £6.30 or 2.99% to £216.95 on a Band D equivalent property. So those are the key areas to note, and I will now hand over to Charlotte, who will be very happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ash. Councillor Field, Catherine.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to have a word about the consultation, because I know we have to consult. But we are, as every arm of government is, a collection of representatives, not delegates. And I am very concerned that it could appear that we are setting our budget by what the people have told us to do, i.e. the larger the majority in favour of something, the more likely we are to do it. Now, it's all right being told there's 69% in agreement. What it doesn't tell us is how many people out of the 440,000 odd we have in this district that actually represents. So were we to ignore the 69% and do what we first thought of, it looks like we're just ignoring the consultation. As we don't know the numbers, that figure is absolutely meaningless. And I just think the public will read this and quite rightly make all the assumptions that you can do when you hear 69% of people don't like something. And they're not getting the full picture. Indeed, we're not getting the full picture either.
I'll let Charlotte come back to you on that one.
A fair point. In paragraph 47 of the covering paper, and we do know that for the majority of questions, we received around 40 responses from members of the public.
Council Projects.
I just would like to support Councillor Field in saying that we should not be taking much notice of these percentages. Percentages, as you know, can skew things enormously. And if you think about people are told that the Delaware Pavilion have got £7 million, shall we cut the Delaware Pavilion grant? Yes. How many people said yes? 27. But that is displayed as 69% said we should cut the Delaware grant. So I agree with you.
Yes, I tend to as well. I think they're rather misleading. Are there any other comments? Did you want to add anything further to the report, Charlotte?
Only just to express my thanks to heads of service and the finance team for the really detailed work that's gone on in the background. But no, thank you.
I have my hand up, Chairman.
Yeah, I'll be with you in a moment, John. I've got one or two here within the chamber that want to ask questions, if that's okay. Councillor Rory McCourt. Rory?
Thank you, Leader. No, it's just a couple of comments on the report, and thanks to the report. It's excellent, by the way, and congratulations on, settling within budget, which is always a pleasure to achieve. I would echo what Councillor Prochak has just said about statistics and how they can be manipulated. I mean, I noticed that in the consultation, respondents were not supportive of additional provision for supporting homeless households. 46% of the public were opposed, which again, maybe 13 people or whatever. But I would say I think it's right and proper that we do support homeless households. These are people who unfortunately have found themselves in very dire circumstances, and therefore as a council, as public representatives, it's behoving on us to lift people out of poverty and to support them so that they can have secure homes. So, and we go down that path, and thanks to the housing colleagues who are, increasing the temporary accommodation. It's also about investing to save, actually, which I'm not sure the public would have been aware of that. I probably should, on a separate issue regarding the NJC pay claim, I probably should declare an interest, as I'm a member of Unison and a Unison shop steward and branch committee member at my place of work. I think that staff deserve a decent pay rise because they've had to suffer many years of either no pay rises at all, cuts in real terms. I think it's probably unlikely, speaking as a Unison member, that the maximalist demand of the union for whatever it is, 10%, will be agreed to eventually. I think last year it was about 3%, I believe. The union balloted their members and there was no appetite for industrial action, and I think they'll probably reach the same conclusion this year. So that's all I would say on that. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Rory. Councillor Aaron Rathbone.
Thank you, Chair, and yes, congratulations on a balanced budget. It was just to raise some comments that came from over on scrutiny in terms of, not necessarily for now, but for looking at proposals for maybe heavy vehicles, 4x4s and parking. I know some of the councils have looked into that, for example, Cardiff, and maybe bouncing off those concession fees, reducing those potentially in future. And also, we don't currently have a concession fee for heavy bulky waste, whereas in some of those deprived areas, say maybe they've got some objects they want removing but can't afford to do so. Currently, there's no choice for them. There's no cheaper rate. Again, maybe we could look at that, and also just to support that I support the Rye Harbour due to the bio-bees incident and the continued pollution since they have from the shipping containers, that the fee should maybe not reduced. Thank you very much.
Thank you for making those points. Councillor Bayliss, Christine.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to commend really our officers for an excellent piece of work. I think we got perhaps a slightly better settlement from the government than we were originally accepting. And it's our duty, I feel, as Labour councillors to always be using our contacts nationally to talk about the needs and requirements of our district. I mean, if we were to, if the government decide to go down a smaller unitary settlement, I think we would find actually on that sort of smaller model that actually our deprivation numbers would be significantly higher. So that might benefit us financially. But my main message, I think, on behalf of the Labour group and Labour councillors is, well done and a great piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Councillor John Barnes. John?
Thank you, Leader. First of all, I echo the congratulations to all the staff and to Charlotte in particular. A tremendous effort, really, to bring in a balanced budget. Just comment slightly on the settlement. Paragraph 515 in the medium-term strategy has a very interesting diagram, which really, I think, Christine should study before thinking that we've done well. What really worries me is that inflation already is overtopping our current increase in spending power, and that's only going to get worse over the next couple of years. We also have a quite large rural hinterland, and the cost of delivering rural services is really not taken account of in this financial settlement at all. So we haven't done well, slightly better on the deprivation factor than I might have expected, but much worse on the cost of delivery of our services. And of course, nearly all the government grants, I think pretty well everyone, has been mopped up. We now have this single grant structure which weights heavily for deprivation. But they do seem to ignore the fact that to get services to people in rural areas, and we too have our deprivation out in the sticks, the costs are much higher. And there is a real danger here when you look at the end. It's very nice that we've balanced the budget this year, but the anticipation in the medium-term financial strategy is that we're not going to balance in either of the two successive years. And I know that we're unlikely to get a pay rise as anything like as large as 10%. But when you see the reserves, the usable reserves, down to about 1.5 million at the end of our lifespan as a council, and you know that a pay settlement in excess of 3% will cost us, then you do begin to wonder whether we shouldn't be budgeting to actually increase our reserves by somewhat more than we have. In that context, you may think talking about the Rye Harbour Nature Reserve is de minimis. After all, we're talking about £1,000 plus. It's the line in the budget that I want to protect rather than the actual sum. And I will point out that we have a representative on the management committee, and indeed for several years have had the chairmanship of that committee. That obviously really means that for our small grant, we get a major piece of clout in one of the most important nature reserves in the county. So I do hope that we preserve the line in the budget in some way, and I would support what was said by one of the members of Cabinet earlier. I think really we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. I think that's all I have to say, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Sue Project, Sue.
Thank you. I'm just adding my voice to congratulations and the officers' work over 2 years, actually. And certainly the government have done something unique, given us a 3-year settlement. However, it's not all good news, as Councillor Barnes has pointed out, next year and the year after, etc. And also to point out that the government removed the Rural Deprivation Index from the fair funding. So we have lost out in terms of the rural areas. What I wanted to do, though, was to actually support the budget, obviously, but to actually draw attention to the medium-term financial plan. As you know, the recommendation is for the Pavilion grant to be, the Delaware Pavilion grant is to be cut over 2 years. And you will have read on page 59, I hope you will have read on page 59, the Delaware's response to that, asking us not to cut the grant yet, that the timing is not right for this cut. I originally proposed to Cabinet that we set up an informal, maybe, stakeholder group where we could sit down and look at the strategic position of the Delaware. Strategic, by strategic I mean the future of the Delaware, how it's going to fund itself, to get their business plan, and to actually be very clear as a council about the future of that amazing, iconic building, which we should, as a council, be extraordinarily proud of what they do and what they deliver and what has been achieved over many years, cross-party. But that has not met with any kind of support. So my proposal is that actually the cut is delayed until we have had the report from officers on the future of the Delaware. And I mean the future of the Delaware in its broadest sense. If you look at the response to the cut, and someone has said, oh, well, it's £1,000 a week, that's easy to find, that may be so, but we don't know yet. Maybe the Delaware can produce a business plan with that kind of reduction from the grant. We haven't had the business plan yet. And I think we need to delay this decision about the cut until we have the business plan. I can totally understand the response to any kind of venue that's providing, whether it's entertainment, food, drink, whatever they're providing. I can understand because we have pubs closing all the way across the country. Minimum wage has gone up 10% every year. Good. But that's a cost to the venue. National insurance is now 70k a year. The energy bills for the Delaware, 270,000 a year, a 300% rise in energy bills. So I'm suggesting that either the Delaware board can find that £1,000 a week cut in their business plan, or we will cut it once we know. But we need to know, we need to sit around the table and know exactly what is going on with the Delaware and how it's going to work in the future. So that's my proposal. I hope I've got support for it. It means delaying the decision on the cut to the Delaware until we have more information. And I understand a report is coming from officers in the near future on what is going to be the future of the Delaware in terms of our legacy, Rother's legacy, this building. Thank you.
Charlotte, can you just confirm when this cut would take effect? You know, what does concern me a little bit is if £1,000 a week is going to make the Delaware not viable, then they're in a pretty dodgy position. You know, I think from that point of view, I'm not sure that the impact is as great as we make out. So that would worry me just a little bit to feel that that would be the case. I think that the proposed cut, if you like, of the grant from 500,000 to 450,000 was to acknowledge the cuts that we've been able to undertake within the council over the last 2 years, which has been 10% and then 10%. So it was felt that that was across the board in allowing that particular savings to be made there. So when would this come into place, and are we going to be in a situation where we can reinstate if we wanted to, or defer at a later date?
Yes, so the reduction in Delaware grant funding doesn't affect 26-27. It was proposed to be introduced from 27-28. And the reason that it's timed in that way is to enable us to give notice to the Delaware. If we change their grant funding by 10% or more, we need to give them a notice period to do so. So that's why it's tabled now for a decision, which would impact them in 27-28.
So it's not an immediate impact, and it does give them time in order to look at their housekeeping if they felt that that was appropriate to do so. Catherine?
Yes, thank you. As this isn't an immediate cut, and as there are massive works going on at the Delaware to improve their financial viability and to improve their offer, I see absolutely no harm at all in putting this cut on the back burner pro tem. Then we can review the whole situation once the work is completed and we know financial stability of the Delaware.
Hazel?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would actually support Councillor Projak and Councillor Field. I feel that the auditorium won't be creating any business. for quite some time. And I just think it's an extra pressure that they don't really need at this moment. And it is within our gift to delay it. It's not a significant, as we keep saying, £1,000 is a significant amount of money. So I'm not quite sure why we're making such a fuss about delaying it, if we can. Thank you.
Can you guide us on that, please, Charlotte?
I have to clarify outside of the meeting because I don't have the grant conditions on me, but my understanding is there is a notice period that we would have to serve. So by not taking the decision, I'm not saying necessarily today, but not taking the decision ahead of the condition that we have to give notice, it would prevent it from taking effect from the April 27. So that would be the only implication.
Okay, then a decision could be rescinded. Yeah, that's within our gift to be able to say, okay, this is the notice given, but that could be rescinded given the fact that we want this information and we want this ability to be able to discuss with them their business plan, which I'm not sure that we've actually, it's not ready for us yet.
Could I suggest a sort of compromise? Is maybe that we agree the recommendation, but subject to report from the, I don't know what, is it the Deputy Chief Executive or is Mr Ellis?
It's Duncan.
Well, subject to the report by Mr Ellis.
Just to clarify, Councillor Bayliss, what do you want the report to cover? The viability of the reduction in grant?
Yes, I think what we want to see in the report is the bringing together of all the proposals that are currently swirling around the pavilion, and whether those are going ahead or not, and without going into too much detail, I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. But if that can be the focus of the work that Mr Ellis is undertaking, so I would support the recommendation, but subject to the outcome of that report, I think would be a good compromise here.
So there's a need for more clarity around the business case that we've making this decision on. Is that right? Gareth, Councillor Delaney.
Well, for me, I think the issue of a reduction of 50,000 is only a small amount in the overall grant that we're giving them. However, I do hear what is being said here. So I think the principle, I would be happy to support the recommendation, as Councillor Bayliss suggested. But if evidence was presented to us at a later stage from Duncan that this was the wrong decision and we needed to support them more, then I would be happy to rescind that decision.
Councillor Giowan-Ash.
Thank you. I think Councillor Barnes had his hand up first, but I'm happy to go. Yeah, thank you. Obviously, I have. Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
I was simply going to observe that the important thing is surely to give notice this year and call for extra information, reserve the right to take a decision on implementation at the next budget. In other words, it's a form of words that you need to find, which is very close to that of Christine Councillor Bayliss. But it's important you give notice at this moment, otherwise you'll find yourself in difficulty balancing the budget next year.
I'm inclined to agree with you that notice should be given, but we're in a position that we could rescind that notice once the information is to hand.
Chair, can I understand what is this a further amendment? Is it?
You can't make one.
Yeah, yes, effectively it is.
One would hope you might.
I'm not quite sure what you're moving, that we actually delete that cut until we know.
No, I'm saying that we give the notice. I'm suggesting that we give the notice because we have a legal duty to give a year's notice, but it's subject, that legal notice is subject, the enactment of that notice is subject to the report and the investigation by Mr Ellis into the finances of Delaware. That's what I'm saying. It's a compromise on what you suggested.
And my only comment would be the notice has to be in April, not now.
Whatever notice needs to be given, but we can be clarified. Can I invite Councillor Gio who's lead for finance, to make a comment? He would have heard everybody's. Ash?
Sure, thank you. Yes. Obviously, I have the utmost respect for Councillor Prochak's comments. The part that I was going to raise around that was what will the impact be of delaying it, but I believe Charlotte's covered that already. I suppose just from my perspective, it feels like we have this same conversation every single year, and we are no further forward in changing the budget that goes across to the Delaware since the beginning of time. So when you look holistically across what we have asked our officers to deliver year on year, a 10% saving followed by a further 10% saving across their budget lines, and each department has literally pulled out all the stops. It just seems a little bit unfair that an external body isn't being treated with the same kind of level of, I suppose, you know, that drive to reduce their cost or to deliver savings. And I just feel like we talk about this every single year, and every single year we rubber stamp the 500,000 over and over again. So my view would be that notice does need to be served. And as we've already discussed in some of the other areas, if that amount of reduction clearly has an impact to Rother's budget, and is in keeping with the savings that we've asked everybody else to make, if that reduction causes significant harm to the Delaware, then I would question their overall business plan and viability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ash. Catherine?
Thank you. I think Councillor Girwan has hit the nail on the head. The Delaware is an outside body. It isn't a council service. And we have rubber stamped the grant year after year after year, which means that unlike other council services which have seen increase some years, the Delaware has not seen an increase for a very long time, and therefore has year after year after year been receiving a real terms cut. And I think Councillor Bayliss' pragmatic compromise is probably the way to go.
Which I would agree with. Are there wanted to add to this particular discussion? If I can invite Anna to make a contribution, Anna, and I'll come back to you.
I was just going to go back to Councillor Prochak's comment about the business plan. We have been working with the Delaware Pavilion over the last few years to develop a business plan, and we haven't had it yet, but we have been working with them. And there was just one other point I was just going to mention about the consultation. We didn't get many responses to this year's budget consultation, as you heard. You know, as you know, Charlotte said, I think there were only 40 from members of the public, but we do get comments every year about the extent of funding for the Delaware Pavilion. It's quite a consistent theme year on year.
Yeah, thank you for adding that, Anna. Aaron?
Thank you, Chair. No, it was really just to agree with Councillor Girwan's comments. You know, we've been through this exercise for quite some time now, and the officers and the council have gone through all sorts to find savings. And this is not, you know, they're still going to a sizable sum compared to a lot of other things that we've had to look into and make hard decisions by. So I feel, especially given we're still waiting for a business proposal, business plan rather, and so, you know, and also, as has been stated, even if we give notice here, this can be rescinded if further information comes forward. So I'm happy to support Councillor Bayliss' change, but I don't think it's necessarily needed. I think the change can already be enacted if and when we need to later down the line. But overall, I think I support the cuts that are already there. Thank you.
Okay. Are you comfortable with the amendment to that proposal? So can somebody move the report based on what is printed? I'll move it with my... Yeah, do you just want to clarify that from Louise's point of view? Or allow Charlotte to just get the wording?
Okay. To give notice to the Delaware Pavilion on a 10% grant reduction from 27-28, the decision is taken subject to a further report to Cabinet on Delaware Pavilion funding and future options appraisal. Is that okay? Yeah.
As officers said, we have been waiting for quite some years for this business plan, from really when we started to kick off with the Levelling Up Fund and the proposals. It was very necessary for them to stand on their own 2 feet once these proposals and investment had taken place. So it does need a framework of a business plan that we can work to with them round the table in the right way. Yeah? Okay, so can we just vote on that then, please? Those in favour? And that's unanimous. And thank you for the discussion. Just referring to the consultation, we have received from Camber Parish Council some comments which have been read by all members of Cabinet and acknowledged, and where there's any need to go back to, we can have a look at that at a later date. So we would acknowledge the receipt of that. Thank you. Right. Yes. I'll invite Butcher to make a comment with regard to consultation, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just during the discussion, it was said that perhaps the responses and the percentages you put there was misleading, Chair, and I thought it's worth adding, Chair, that there is Appendix G that sets out the consultation response and breaks down the numbers, Chair. Perhaps in hindsight, giving numbers alongside the percentage would have been helpful, Chair, but there's definitely no intention by officers to mislead anyone in terms of the responses that was given. Thank you, Chair.
I don't think that was implied. Some observation. I'm sorry. Okay, can we move on now to item 7?
I just want to check about OSC's recommendations. Are we taking them forward?
Oh yes, I beg your pardon, and I should have, I've got a note here to have noted myself. Acknowledge the work done by overview and scrutiny, and I think that, you know, as always, having that opportunity of reviewing what's coming forward has been very, very useful. And I think both those areas there have been taken and accepted as part of the arrangement. So thank you for scrutiny for that. It's very, very important that they continue to cast that overall view of what's happening, and I think it's been very helpful. Yeah. Good. Right. Where are we? Council plan. Agenda item 7, which is for those on page 63. This is the to consider the refreshed council plan. So it's basically an existing council plan that we've worked on to bring us to where we are in the current sort of climate of going forward. It's action plan and annual progress for 2025. To consider recommendations arising from Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which I think we've received and I think were welcomed. It was held on the 26th of January. The report and recommendation are reproduced below within the minutes of the meeting. And I would just like to acknowledge the work that officers put in. I believe that this was work under your watchful eye, Anna, but with Alice being the main scribe on all of this. And well done, Alice. It's an excellent work that you put forward. That made very interesting reading, and I think all members would acknowledge that. So thank you very much indeed. Are you wanting to make any comments, Anna, Alice?
I was just going to give a summary, really, and just to say that it does provide the strategic direction for the council until 2029, and it has been updated to reflect some quite significant changes, namely local government reorganisation. It does retain the key themes of thriving local economy, live well locally and green to the core. And the priorities have been refined to be more outcome focused and aligned with our resources and also our partner capacity. So you'll see that running through the plan. In terms of key updates, strengthened economic, housing, health, climate and infrastructure objectives, and that the operational detail has been moved to the supporting action plan. It details the progress that we've made over the last year with most actions on track, and it's got highlights such as the new Cambersands Welcome Centre and the extensive disabled facilities support grant. Success measures have been updated to improve relevance and data availability, and you will see that we've got equality objectives, and that we're hoping for approval to go to consultation with the equalities objectives. The plan embeds climate considerations across all areas and positions the council to maintain clear priorities, manage all our risks and ensure continuity through our organisational change. There's also a couple of extra bits, if I may. Firstly, the feedback from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I don't know if you wanted to mention that, but it's in the minutes. 3 areas were raised. One was about rewording of Live Well Locally Outcome 1 to change the phrase improve housing quality. The second was the Outcome 2 for Green to the Core. The revised objective be reworded to state less waste and a thriving local circular economy. And also that Bexel in Bloom Award be included in the Rother's award-winning Spaces section of the annual report. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Thank you, Leader. I mean, I'd just like to, echo what Anna has just said about what a lovely, readable council plan it was. And we did discuss at quite detail the council plan, and we did indeed look at the objectives and make a couple of suggestions. And Anna has very kindly covered them for me. Thank you.
Jolly good. Anything further to add, Anna?
Just one last bit. In addition to that, we would like approval to include 2 really important initiatives in the district over the next few years, which is the Town of Culture and the application that's going to be made by the Dulawar Pavilion, and also those events around the Year of the Normans and the Bayo Tapestry, which involves Battletown Council.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Timpey, Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. This is really a wonderful thing to read, and it's very clear, and well done, everybody. I would like to bring up something, though, that's caused a lot of concern in my own district, which is Sackville Ward, and that is the closing of Sea Road Surgery. And if you look at Live Well Locally, item 2, Foundations for Fairer Access to Good Health, we say improve access to health facilities through partnership working. Well, I'm not quite sure what we're actually doing to make that happen. But these surgeries being closed are affecting our residents and will affect our residents quite significantly. And I do recall some time ago that, of course, we have the wonderful new diagnostic centre on Beeching Road. Opposite, we're supposed to have a new NHS facility, which would, in fact, incorporate Sea Road and Albert surgeries. But that doesn't seem to be happening at any kind of speed. And I understand our own MP tried to get the district valuers to take their finger out, so to speak, and get on with whatever's holding up the NHS from building whatever it is needs to be built. So I'm very concerned that we've got this wonderful what we need to do, but what are we going to do, and how are we going to do it, and when are we going to do it? Because the residents of Sea Road Surgery and also the Albert Road in your district, Christine, are very concerned, and I get emails probably hourly from people. And I did promise them I would bring it up, and I do hope that I get some answers for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Councillor Bayliss, Christine.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to support Councillor Timpey. I mean, for me, the opening of the facility in Beeching Road has to come first before we start closing any of the town centre surgeries. I'm registered with obviously one of the surgeries, and I regularly have to go to Pebsham for appointments. And I'm lucky I've got a car and I can drive myself up there. Not everybody is able to do that, and I wholeheartedly support the campaign to keep that surgery open until we have got a facility in the centre of town, which the centre in Wainwright Road will be state of the art when it's actually finally built. But I would also like to assure Councillor Timpey that we are talking to the Department of Health. We are talking, the MP has been talking to me, and I've been supporting and writing my own letters to the Department of Health to try and see if we can free this up. But the issue is with the district valuer, who sets the rents that are to be paid to developers, and they are far too low. So the developer that actually builds the facility it can't make a profit as it currently stands. And we've had to sort of like incorporate some housing and some other bits and pieces in other projects, like in Battle and in Robertsbridge, in order to get those two surgeries built. And we've done a lot of work on the Barnhorn Green surgery, but this one is really, really critical in the town centre.
Thank you, Christine. Aaron, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, thanks. I fully support Councillor Timpey's concerns, and just querying whether officers know or whether the merger with NHS England and NHS is affecting things, or the dissolution of NHS England. Because I also note that the mental hospital is also delayed, I believe, as well. So just querying whether the NHS and Department of Health merger is maybe slowing things or causing confusion, possibly.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Field, Catherine?
Yes, thank you. Moving on from doctors' surgeries, although Battle is very much in need of their surgery improvements. I just wanted to talk about the green to the core bit, and I do welcome the change in nomenclature and the change of the trust. I would say, were I feeling grumpy as the portfolio holder, it would have been nice to have known in advance and been perhaps consulted even. But I think we are forging ahead on this, as paragraph, I think it's 22, says in the covering report. And I really do recommend that you read and look at the reports to the Climate Change Steering Group and also the minutes of that group, because we do monitor closely the action plan for the climate emergency, and we are making great strides. And I think it's something we can all be proud of. We are getting recognised nationally for the work we are doing. And I have to thank the officers for that, and political support also. But it mustn't be overlooked. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for making those comments. On the screen, I've got Councillor John Barnes. Then I was going to invite officers to make a response.
Yes, I've got three rather distinct points. But first, could I just say something about, as a former chairman of Primary Care Trust, could I just support what was said about the importance of finding a replacement for Albert Road and for the other surgery in Sea Road? They're outdated premises. We need modern premises. One of the things that possibly we could look at, I recommended this back years and years ago to Lewes District Council, is we might take that Beeching Road site in hand and develop both housing, thus meeting some of our council housing needs, and a surgery, and earn ourselves a steady income over the years from providing that facility. And it would seem to me the Beeching Road site is sitting there idle. It needs housing, it needs a surgery, and it's something which possibly our housing company could be encouraged to look at and provide a surgery as part of that project. I wasn't going to say that before this meeting, but actually, since it's come up, I bring to bear some 18 years of experience of the health service. You really need to put a boost into the provision of primary care, and that's what we're already doing at Robertsbridge. We need to do the same at Beeching Road. Coming to what is the main subject in front of us, I had 3 points, and I'll make them very quickly. The first is, under the first, I like the new format, incidentally, and I do congratulate the officers on it and on making it a performance-related outturn. But I was sorry to see under the heading of a thriving economy that we've lost mention of the development of skills in the area. We are short of skills in many parts of our local economy, and it would have been nice to see that as a deliverable outcome. Under Green to the Core, I think you would read 4 under that, and you would fail to grasp from that we are actually the planning authority for the finest surviving medieval landscape in Europe. Very important Ramsar sites, and for Bilwater, which is a very important refuge for some of our threatened species of gull. I think the local plan is beginning to make long strides to recognising Bilwater. It still has to find, I think, an appropriate chapter to cover the historic landscape. But I would welcome tightening up the wording here so that we recognise much more that it's not just countryside that we have to conserve and enhance. We actually have a heritage landscape that has to be conserved and enhanced. And we're not doing ourselves justice because we're winning appeal after appeal, the latest one at Downash Wood, on the grounds of not doing damage to what we've inherited from the past in landscape terms. My final point is really on page 89. You mentioned the implication is that you're looking for a solution which might well be the Bexhill, the bypass that was cancelled back in the early 2000s. But really our growth corridor is also the A21. And I do think we need to mention the A21 growth corridor, particularly I think the bypass around Hurst Green and the bypass at Flimwell. Because without that, the kind of housing developments the Roll needs are not going to be able to be developed. And so that really should go into our plan and be part of our legacy to the Unitary Authority. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you very much, John, for those comments, and I think they've been noted by officers, so I think that's well said. I was going to invite Joe or Ben to give us an update with regard to the provision of surgeries. I know that a lot of work's gone on and we're not sitting on our hands. We know that Beeching Road is a vacant site, but this is a problem that is beset every other local authority in the country, or certainly in our area, with regard to provision of surgeries. So perhaps, Joe, you could just enlighten members this evening.
Yeah, well, from a council perspective, a lot of effort has gone in, as you say, in terms of trying to bring 3 sites forward, one at Barnhorn Green, one at Watchoke and Battle, and these ones at Beeching Road. The one at Beeching Road is in fairly advanced stages now, and we've been pushing to get that development off the ground. It is taking up, in response to Councillor Barnes, the north part of a larger site that we are putting into the Reg 18 consultation for homes, for new homes. So it will come forward as a regeneration and a housing-led development. But yeah, I mean, I won't exercise the frustrations and challenges of working with NHS England on this, but the amount of investment that has gone in from local people to these GP surgeries includes levelling up grant, in Barnhorn Green to the tune of 5 million. There's also the amount of hours and officer time here, but also other grants to facilitate it. So a lot of energy and effort on the part of the district. So yeah, we would like to see the health partners come forward to underpin really the what are market rates and market rents. So it's not an unreasonable request really. But yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Councillor Timby Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask Joe, going back to that, in the action plan where we talk about the surgeries, we've got a delivery of December 2027. Is that actually realistic?
Yeah, I think that's still that was updated recently, so that's I would say within you need to leave space for some error, but I would say around there, yeah, from spades being in the ground, 18 months to 2 years, yeah.
So that's for all three, Barnhorn Green, Beeching Road, and
excuse me.
Watch Oak.
Barnhorn Green, I think, is due to be delivered within that time frame, from memory. I'm not intimately involved in that project. But the Beeching one, I think, feels a realistic time frame. And Watch Oak, really, the Watch Oak's there. That's ready to go now. It needs a small planning permission, but the funding's in place. Just needs, again, they all need the rents to be agreed, which I think on Barnhorn Green we're fairly advanced.
I'm not saying that things aren't happening, but I'm just a bit curious because the wording says Beeching Road initial conversations are continuing. Well, how long are they going to continue before there's some finite timing and we see spades in the ground, I guess?
The timing is challenging because we're not in control of it, but the latest email I have from the developer in question who's representing the NHS has it that things are progressing and proceeding. That time frame that's been put forward is our best estimate at the moment, but I can't be more precise than that, I'm afraid, at this stage.
Catherine.
Thank you. Yes, interested in the comments about the Watch Oak, because the last I heard was that the NHS was being difficult and causing the delay. And now I hear that all we're needing is just a little planning consent, which leads me to ask, if that is the case, why hasn't the little planning consent been started, and when might it be?
Can I suggest that we maybe, if we want to have a detailed discussions on GP surgeries, we could do that outside the meeting? But I'm keen to brief you properly on it. It's just quite a complex piece of work. When I say that there's a planning consent required, that's what's required to bring the development forward, on the understanding that the NHS are still considering the rental values that have been put forward, which is the same issue on the other two sites. But I'm quite happy to take conversation offline, Councillor, perhaps.
I think that's a good idea, especially for those members where they're in the wards where these issues are taking place and that they're being confronted by residents, quite rightly, as to the uncertainty. But I know for a fact that officers have been trying to bring this forward, but it's not within our control. It's the NHS that are holding us back, the district valuer is holding them back. So, I think that would be a good idea if you're comfortable with that. Sue.
Joe, could I add Robertsbridge to that list? Because I actually, in our MP meeting, that he has regularly asked him to, and I think I asked Councillor Bayliss as well, to actually include Robertsbridge, which had been missed off with exactly the same problem. And that's had planning permission for years. And we don't have affordable housing on it because of this whole issue. So could you add Robertsbridge to the list of problems?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Catherine.
Very happy to have an offline discussion because I realise that some of the issues involved could well be sensitive and not the sort of thing you can discuss in public. But I do think it must come back to a public forum because residents need to know what's going on. Absolutely. And they need to know the timescale and have some certainty about their future surgeries.
Yeah, I think that sounds a good idea. I think that Joe has acknowledged that. We have Will Wright's replacement with Ben Burton that's here this evening, and he's bringing himself up to speed with all that's going on there. And I think the residents do have a right to know because obviously doctor surgeries are a very integral part of our community. With regards to the annual report, it's a pity this can't go through every letterbox in Rother. I would love this to go through every letterbox in Rother if it was it's feasible. I know it can be done, but you know, there's so much good stuff in here that people don't know about. I think we may have touched on this in previous years, how best we could do it. I know a lot of local authorities do it when they send out council tax and various things like that. So I'm not sure it's something that we could... I would love to do it anyway.
Sorry. You won't be surprised to hear I'm not in favour of large lumps of paper going out around the district because we are digital. Yeah, nothing if not predictable. But we could have a link on Rother Alerts, couldn't we, to the plan with something positive about why people should look at it.
And we could use the press. You know, at the end of the day, I think, you know, we have newspapers that are out there that like to promote stories, and I think that we ought to do that. We have My Alerts that hits 38,000 of our customers' inboxes. Whether they read it or not, I don't know. But I think we need to make that real effort to get good stuff out there, because otherwise we're just being standing back and being criticised unnecessarily at times. So that's something perhaps Anna and Alice and Anne could look at going forward. Right, so given the fact that, do we need to sort of acknowledge this? Just bear with me. So effectively, the refreshed council plan, its action annual progress report be approved and adopted. And again, thank you so much. And Anna, did you want to make a comment?
Just saying about the resolution about the equalities objectives for consultation as well.
So yes, indeed. So this is a recommendation to council. So basically, the work has been completed. We've had a jolly good look at it. We're very happy with it, and it goes now to full council to ratify. Yeah. Okay. Next item is item 8, page 141, and this is the High Street rental auctions. So this is a report from Head of Corporate and Strategic Services. Purpose of the report to provide information and background on high street rental auctions and seek Cabinet approval to undertake preparatory work for potential implementation in Bexhill Town High Streets, which would act as a pilot for other areas. Did you want to... who was going to introduce this? Are you happy to, Anna, or did Christine?
Yes, I was going to introduce it.
Please do.
Yes, thank you. And this is a really good report. I thank officers for putting some time and effort into this, and also in looking at other authorities that were in the sort of very first wave of this particular project. This high street rental auctions sort of is part and parcel of the Reviving High Streets initiative by the new government. Something that I think we should be supporting. We all know that we've got properties that are empty in our high street. We did really well in COVID. We actually ended up with more occupied premises after COVID than before, but slowly and surely banks have shut. We've had the recent announcement about the factory shop closing in St Leonard's Road. And so, this will make an important difference. I think it will send a message to landlords that actually they can't keep empty properties on their books. Somebody once tried to explain to me what the tax advantages of doing that. I didn't really understand it, but I do understand that there are incentives for actually not renting properties on occasions, and it blights our high streets. So I would hope that Cabinet will wholeheartedly support this and so we can bring back a full report designating Bexhill Town Centre for high street rental auctions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members want to make any observations? Councillor Project.
Thank you. I was a bit concerned about this initially because I thought there wasn't enough information, and that particularly as the town board, what are they called, are saying they didn't want the stick approach, they wanted a carrot approach, and then not many councils seem to be taking it up, and then there was a lot of work for our regeneration department. So I had a few questions about it, but Anna kindly got me more information, and also Thomas Fitzgerald, because 32 councils are actively adopting these measures now, apparently, and 14 of these have designated a street or a centre. And vacant units become let before the system is in place. So it's the whole engagement and designation that actually pushes the empty shop owners to do something. So support it, yes, very good. It's a pity that it has to be us doing it rather than the town board, whatever they're called. I just wanted a bit of a health warning on the local plan, because in the local plan, we've always had that Bexhill should reduce its shopping area by, I think, removing the southern end of Sackville and St Leonard's and Sea Road, and that because this retail is too fragmented, according to views on that. So I think we need to be aware of that, of the local plan. I know the local plan's out to consultation, it's not final yet, but it would be worth actually making sure we look at that to see that it matches what we're doing with this scheme. So yes, happy to support it.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? Anne and Anna, did you want to add anything to it? I know that this is part of the priority of the neighbourhood board, and I think from a cost point of view, the audit is something that we need to have, but that's going to be covered by way of external cost. Is there anything else to add to reassure?
It's just to reassure Councillor Prochak that this initiative per se is not something that the neighbourhood board could do, because it's a statutory power for the local authority to take on itself. One of the reasons why we're looking to designate Bexhill Town Centre high streets is because it does dovetail with the direction of travel of the Bexhill Neighbourhood Board. So the idea is that there would be a strategic alignment between the two. The local authority, through this designation, can this is an enforcement power. It's not something that the Neighbourhood Board can do. It doesn't come at a cost at this stage to the council, because we've put in a proposal to MHCLG for some specific funding for the purpose of the initial audit. So we will be looking to come back to council with the learning from the first phase and making further recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Anne. So effectively, we really want to resolve that we will approve further exploration of this and the further reports to come back. And I like the idea that, that we could pilot this for perhaps other parts of the district in some way, be it Rye and Battle, that would experience similar sort of problems. Councillor Gareth Delaney.
Can I just ask one thing, just about the implementation of it? If at auction, is there like a reserve limit on the value that somebody could bid on successfully? Or if there wasn't a bidder, what would happen then? Do we know?
To be honest, we're quite far away from that stage, but that is something that we would look to address as part. At the moment, we're looking at the feasibility of designating the area, and then we would. Not many councils are very much further beyond us, so we would be looking to the learning from the early adopters, and we will present that back to you in an update report. and then it would be for council to decide whether they wanted to adopt this power fully in that designated area.
So at this stage, we're exploring it. We're a long way to go. It'll be a long way down the line. But, you know, these are the things that we would need to bear into consideration at a later date. Right, did you want to move? Oh, sorry, Hazel. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just ask, when you did research with other councils that have started this, had they actually got to the point where they had tried to auction something and then the owner had taken them to court? I mean, I'm just wondering how all this will stand up in a court of law. I mean, even though it is, you know, we do have the authority, I just wonder.
Yes, it's a good question, because although there are lots of councils, as Councillor Prochak noted, there are lots of councils that have taken it to the stage that we're proposing now. The number of enforcements is still in single numbers. So it is a very new power and it takes a while to get going. We may be coming back to council in perhaps 6 months from now with recommendations. I think it is important to note that there are other towns locally that we've spoken to that have gone through this exercise and then council have chosen not to take on the designation. So I think it is very much an exploratory exercise right now, and we'll come back with much more detailed information. And by the time we come back, we will have a lot more learning from those early adopter councils.
So basically, approved to take forward, to explore more, and then review it. Yeah. But it might create a reaction from those people that are sitting on empty properties that are dilapidated in some way. So if we can just vote on the resolve to approve further exploratory. Those in favour, that's fine. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Anne. We now move on to the next item, being agenda item 9, which is the reference to the Shareholder Executive Committee Development Facility Agreement that was discussed recently by the committee to receive the recommendations from that committee to make amendments to the Development Facility Agreement and to approve the officer declaration to make any future adjustments to the DFA. Are you going to introduce this? Beg your pardon, Ash, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the report is there. So it's the recommendations from the Shareholder Exec Committee, and it was really looking to make the amendments to the DFA and the officer delegation. Following the last meeting that we had very recently, the wording has been updated, so I'm hoping that that encompasses the views that were set out. So the recommendations is number 1, that the proposed amendments to the DFA be approved, and then the new wording for the second one is that the Director of Resources be granted delegated authority in consultation with Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Finance and Governance, which is myself, to make operational amendments to the Development Facility Agreement on behalf of the Council, with all delegations exercised reported to the following Shareholder Exec Committee meeting. So I hope that encompasses the essence of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Field, Catherine.
Yes, thank you. As the Shareholder Executive Committee is us, and we've had the meeting and we discussed it at great length, I'd just like to move the report, please.
Excellent, thank you. Is there someone who's going to second the report? And those in favour, unanimous? Thank you very much indeed. We've all received a bid ballot. We've all received an updated progress report. Submissions have been made to the council with a request that members be made aware to inform their decision. This has come in from a Mr. Cheeseman and an email from the Mosaic Partnership, the bid consultants to Rye. I think this is a report that's with Councillor Davis and Councillor Timpey. So the update to members on the progress on the RYE bid ballot process and seek formal approval of the Director of Resources to cast this council's votes. And I understand that RYE Town Council are supporting. Yeah. Christine, are you going to? Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to say I'd talk a little bit, and then Councillor Timpey, I'm sure, will add on to this. Just to say that absolutely support the proposal or the resolution to cast the votes in favour, 9 votes in favour of the RYE bid. This was a proposal that came from RYE Chamber of Commerce. I think originally it came through the Levelling Up Partnership funding that we received. RYE Chamber of Commerce submitted an interest in putting forward a bid as a way of them, really driving forward improvements in RYE and improvements in the viability of RYE as a sort of destination. We've supported that. We have grant funded them. As far as I am aware, the bid and the consultation is actually more than you would actually need to do in order to sort of comply with the regulations. It has been done properly. RYE Town Council are very supportive. I don't think there was very much dissent in RYE Town Council. So I would urge my colleagues, and I'm sure Councillor Timpey will say the same thing, to support the resolution as set out in our minutes today. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Councillor Timpey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, totally agree with Councillor Bayliss. This is a very important progress for RYE itself. I know we've had some representations from various quarters regarding they're not very happy with it. However, I think when you look at the whole subject of it, this can only benefit RYE residents and also visitors, because it will develop projects that maybe they can't afford at the moment. I mean, it's only going to raise probably about 90 grand, but that can go an awful long way in a small town like RYE. So I would heartily support this and hope that my colleagues do.
Thank you very much indeed. Did officers want to add any comments, please, Anna?
There's one amendment in the report, and instead of it being 9 hereditaments, it should read 8. So if we could just correct that, so we would have 8 votes rather than 9 votes. So just if we could note that. And I did also want to bring it to Cabinet's attention that you've got the representation at the appendix and you've got the response from the Mosaic Group. There was a further email by one of those people that sent in that first representation, raising a few additional points. It came too late. It came on Thursday, so we couldn't add it to the appendix. But the email has been sent to the Mosaic Group, and they've gone through it. Most of the issues raised are the same as in Appendix A, or the appendix, with the explanation. But I can go through very quickly what was raised in the email, if that's helpful.
I don't think there's a real need to do that. We've got it in front of us. The points, if there are any additional points, maybe it might be worth making that.
Yeah. So the petition is mentioned in the appendix. The other points in the subsequent email was failure of proper consultation. I think that's been addressed. There was one about disregard of formal objections, which is about the petition, so that's been addressed in the appendix. There was a point raised about financial burden, but in the email they concentrated on the financial burden for the businesses. And actually the test is about the financial burden on the local authority. And we have, assessed that there isn't a financial burden on the authority with the amount of the levy that we have to pay for. And the other important point, really, just to make, is that Rother District Council's responsibilities are limited just to administering the bid ballot, and that's set out in statute. So a lot of the things that have been raised aren't actually directly ours to deal with, but it's about the bid organisation.
Thanks for that clarity. I don't know whether Hazel and Christine wanted to make any further observation, but I believe that, subject to that change from 9 to 8 in item 1, I think we're looking to support this and push this forward. Christine?
No, I'm happy to propose it, and I'm sure.
I'll second it, yeah.
And those in favour, and that's unanimous. Thank you for officers in the time that you've given us this evening. Right. Agenda item 11. Public conveniences update. Sounds quite exciting, Joe. Yeah, that's right. Was that the short straw? I thought you might have delegated that to Ben. Okay, fine. Update members on 3 operator proposals that have come forward in relation to 3 public conveniences following the failure of the original preferred bidders to progress. To confirm to members that a total of 6 public conveniences now proceeding to lease. Do you want to add to this, Joe, in any way, please?
I'm happy to take questions. It is really quite a procedural report, and you've really summed it up in your introduction. Really, we're wishing to change some of the businesses which are in the confidential appendix, which we can discuss if you wish. But I hope really for information purposes, there's some delegations there to support. Should we any of the other lease arrangements fall through, that a delegation to assign those to parish, or offer those rather to parish and town councils for devolution in the event. But happy to take questions.
Thank you for clarity on that. Are there any points from members? Aaron?
No, thank you, Chair. And I do support the work that's gone into this, and generally supportive as well of the businesses that have put in bids for the toilets. It's just I think it's been shared before, Joe. I think the operational times that the toilets are going to be open and what they're contracted to, I think it's been shared previously. And just for some members, could that be reshared or highlighted, if that's possible? Thank you.
Sure thing.
Have I lost a question there somewhere?
Opening time.
It was about the opening times.
Opening times, okay. And this is going to be looked at.
I'll circulate that back around to all members.
Yeah, okay. Christine?
Yes, yes, thank you for that. And as I say, as Mr. Powell has alluded to, this is a procedural report. You will know that the Cabinet and indeed Council have supported the sort of devolution of public conveniences to the business sector. It has the potential to be win-win-win. I think there are a couple of issues that have been raised with me. I think Aaron has raised the issue around opening days. Of course, some of that will, I think, be dealt with when the planning application comes to Rother, because they're council-owned property. I think it's automatic that all of these cases will come to planning committee, and so that is a really good opportunity at that stage, I think, to be really clear about opening times and when we're making the facility. The second point is that's been raised is around the legal issues and the risks, and one of the things was we were really clear, I think. And I've been clear with members of the public who've raised this issue with me, is that, that there isn't an opportunity after 6 months to say, oh, well, the toilet bit isn't working, so we're actually not going to keep the toilet facilities open to the public. And I was assured that it would be written into the contracts that there must be toilet facilities open to the public. But in the report itself, where it talks about legal implication, it does talk about the fact that there is a risk around that a judgment might not go our way. If an operator did decide to do that and we took them to court, the failure, if they continue to pay their rent and they were providing, say, cafe facilities or other facilities, it does say in the report that there is a risk that a judgment would mean that actually we couldn't enforce that bit of the thing. So I just wondered, what in terms of sort of percentages, what's the risk around that? Well, I think that was a really important point for members to pick up.
Thank you, Christine. Catherine.
Thank you. I'm not going to subject you to my normal rant on the fiasco, which is the public convenience devolution. But surely, if somebody takes on a premises and signs a contract, that's it. It's known, so I don't understand why there could be any risk at all.
Perhaps I can invite Butter to make any observation on those points, please.
Chair, do you want Joe first to respond?
Joe, you respond, and then if necessary, Butter can, or Ben's going to respond.
Yeah, hi there. We'll need to explore that further for you in terms of exact risk, but there will clearly be clauses in the contract that ties them into having to keep open the toilets during that time. I'm meeting with the solicitors tomorrow to go through all of the toilets contract, so I can raise that again for further details, but I suspect that's a fairly low risk in terms of the chances of them trying to push back on what protections there are in the actual lease that they're signing. Should be fairly watertight.
Okay, Ben, thanks for clarity. Did you want to add anything, Christine?
No, just to say that it's paragraphs 11 to 13 that I'm referring to.
Chair, I think the point that's been raised is in relation to the forfeiture solely on the basis of not keeping conveniences open, and I think as has been explained, that's probably a low risk given the circumstances, Chair, but it'll probably be explored further.
Could you repeat that?
Sorry, Chair. I think the point that was made is if this was just in relation to solely in relation to forfeiture over the lease, in terms of not keeping the public conveniences open, and that's where the risk is, which is quite a low risk, but that will be explored further, Chair.
Okay, so that's going to be explored further, and officers will know exactly where we are following various meetings coming forward. Okay. Do we need to? Basically, yes. We just want to.
Quite happy to move the recommendation on that.
As per 1, 2, and 3, and so those in favour. You've seconded that, Hazel, I believe. Yeah, that's great. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed.
Right.
Okay. Agenda item 12. Colonnade marketing approach. This is your report, Joe. This is your report, Joe. Are you going to introduce the report, or is Christine going to introduce the report? Joe's going to introduce the report. Okay.
Thank you, Leader. This is achieving a number of things, this report, in partly in terms of the progress that we've been making with the repairs, just to assure members that that's still on track to be complete in March, and is going well. And yeah, the weather permitting should be in March, but we're confident of that date. In terms of the lease surrender recommendation in the report does recommend that the 18-year that remains on the lease is, and its exclusivity clause is hampering the council's ability to maximise and realise actually the full potential of that site for the wider economic employment and enjoyment of residents and visitors and the benefit of businesses. And that we have an opportunity, we have an opportunity to break from that. The marketing, the details of which are in the confidential appendix. The marketing strategy we propose is for there to be a long-term strategy in terms of the marketing and advertising of the building, which will happen in short order, we hope, depending on the outcome of this evening, by the end of this month, February, with a view to inviting market interest on the main building of the restaurant, an expanded restaurant offer with taking in 2 adjacent kiosks to what people are familiar with presently. That would leave 6 to 7 remaining kiosks, depending on the need for space for proposals for restoring the fountain, the water feature that's nearby. There would also be a short-term offer to as part of the marketing in case of, depending on the level of interest and the quality of the interest we receive in the longer-term offer, a short-term sort of pop-up offer for this summer to make sure that the venue is vibrant and has a good footfall, etc. In terms of alternatives, the option to retain the existing lease is there, and that's what will happen if the surrender arrangements don't proceed. It will revert to the existing situation, which is that there's an existing lease with the current restaurant provider, restaurant operator, with those restrictive clauses. As you'll see in the confidential appendix, it's projected that would offer the council a lower financial return over time, and a lower reduced footfall and a weaker economic benefit as well. In terms of risks, there are a couple of risks to draw attention to. Obviously, there's the risk of vacancy after when we go to market, that we're not successful in securing operators. The marketing projections, financial projections in the confidential appendix are estimates and may not be realised, and we may not proceed to finalising that surrender, in which case it will revert's probably the wrong word. The existing arrangement will continue with those restrictive clauses in the lease. So, mindful that there is a confidential appendix to this report, so for members who've seen that, if we do want to discuss that, we'd need to go into confidential session, Chair, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Joe. Christine?
Yes, I'd just like to add a little bit to that. I think it's unfortunate that we have the lease of the main restaurant operator as 25 years, which was signed, I think, just before the elections in 2019. And I understand from colleagues who were on the council prior to 2000 elections that issues were raised around having that long-term lease arrangement, which we're now having to deal with. I would urge colleagues to support the recommendations in regard to that. I think it would enable a much better offer and a much more varied food offer, because we would be able to, at the moment we are really restricted because of the exclusivity clauses that were in that lease arrangement. So it would give us an opportunity, and a much wider opportunity to be able to offer that mix. In terms of the other marketing and proposals, I would want to say at this stage that this is in lots of ways is fulfilling, if you like, those commitments that we made back at the meeting in July, or when we discussed the petition from the existing tenants. We will be marketing, we will be making this available, and I know officers will make contact with the previous tenants to tell them and make sure they're fully informed that marketing is now commencing. There will be, options Part of the issue with the previous small tenants, not the large restaurant tenant, but part of the issue was that it was, if you like, a licence, a pop-up, easy in, easy out arrangements that were made with those tenants. And we may be able to, and with the right negotiations, come up with something which is much more, gives them much more security going forward. So that, if you like, I think fulfills a lot of the commitment that we made at that July meeting to the previous tenants. And of course, you know, we will take into account a previous track record as tenants. If tenants have paid and demonstrate that we that we have a good relationship with them, that they paid their rent on time, you know, that will score well in terms of renting any particular units at the thing. Just to finally say, and I hope I'm correct, and nobody, I haven't checked on this recently, but for once, you know, finally we address the issue around toilet facilities for the tenants there. It was, you know, really dire that there were, you know, when the main restaurant was closed and the access to their toilets was wasn't on, the people who were working out of the small units didn't have any toilet facilities locally. We had to provide a portaloo in an empty unit, which was just completely unacceptable. And as I understand it, there is work currently underway to make sure that every tenant at the Colonnade will have access to proper toilet facilities and hand washing and what have you, which will be a real improvement, I think, for anybody wanting to trade there. So watch out for the news. The units will be hopefully advertised soon, and we will have a busy summer at the Colonnade, all being well. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Yes, Councillor Project, Sue.
Can I just congratulate officers on the contractor that they've used or got? I can't believe the difference between the contractor that tried to fix the problem initially and didn't. I've still got photographs. The poor Delaware, they had the whole of the front lawn dug up for the whole of the summer, all the wind blowing all the soil into the Delaware, and it didn't fix the problem. So you've got some good guys. I think Councillor Bailey said Bob the Builder got in before there. But so congratulations on that. And I do remember, Councillor Field will remember, she and I pushing not to excavate the Colonnade. They spent £1 million on excavating the Colonnade. Our plan was to upgrade it and provide a public toilet for 30k. Those were the days.
Thank you, Sue. Did you want to make a response, Joe?
Only not to give credit where it's due to the corporate development team and to Tom Atkinson in particular and Nicola Mitchell, who've pushed that repair forward and managed a really good project there.
Councillor Timpey, Hazel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Could I just clarify something? I read, I'm not quite sure where I read this, that the toilet facilities, they're not in each kiosk, are they? It is a separate unit that they have access to. Yeah. Just so long as people listening understand that, because I think that was a bit vague.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. There's one kiosk area set aside for toileting that's shared between the tenants. Yeah.
Okay, well, what I would like then is to move this report as a recommendations 1, 2 and 3, and then we'll go into confidential session, because I believe that there may be needs to discuss other things this evening, if that's okay with officers. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, from the recommendations are there, But do members want to discuss this in any more detail while we've got officers here? That's the point I'm making, and there may be some sensitive information there. You all understand it?
I just had one question, which is presumably the marketing plans preclude the Delaware taking over the colonnade?
I'm not aware of that being a definite plan at this stage. I know a number of expressions of interest have been received from various parties, but not from any one in particular that we're aware of. And we have been keeping expressions of interest confidential.
You know, if you want to discuss this in any more detail, I think we should go into confidential session. Yeah? If that's what members prefer, in order to make sure that all the information is to hand. Catherine?
I'm not clear how the expressions of interest process, and I know there have been expressions of interest, and I know some people who have expressed interest feel they've been left hanging. I'm not sure how that process fits in with the marketing strategy.
I really think we should go into confidential session. Thank you. Those are second.
Second.
Yes? So we're moving into confidential session so we can discuss.
Sorry, have we formally agreed to exclude the public and the
Have we
society?
voted on this?
No, we will vote on that once we've had confidential session. Yes.
You require me to leave, Leader?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No, indeed not, Vicky. You can remain. Okay, we're now back into public session. Agenda item 12. The recommendations are as laid out, items 1, 2 and 3. That's been moved, I believe. Councillor Bayliss, second. Councillor Rory McCourt. Those in favour? Those against? Those that are abstaining? Okay, that is passed.